And hello, welcome to the Endless Backlog podcast. I believe we are on episode 56 or 7. Apologize for not going through the trouble of finding the number. Hope all is well where you are. Yeah, we're on 56. Heard that. The reason this opening is dialed back a bit is because, if you haven't heard, Satoru Iwata is unfortunately no longer with us. He has passed away over the weekend, and we decided, hey, I mean, our next podcast's up, might as well talk about the dude and Nintendo stuff, and, we'll make an attempt to have a little fun, because I believe...
It's what Iwata would want.
Yeah, exactly. Fun. It's like, we've mourned plenty, and I'd like to avoid labeling this the Iwata podcast, I guess. I'll probably give it, like, a different title, just because, I don't know. It feels too like you're money hunting or something at the end. And it's just like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't mind the tribute pieces people have written, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because those are fine, but I felt like when all of YouTube en masse started making videos, it was like, some of them just got to a point where I was like, you're sort of just doing this because it gets really good hits. Like, and I don't want to say that in a mean way, but it's, yeah.
Well, it's a major event.
It is a major event.
Yeah,
You gotta get those subscriber numbers somehow.
Yeah, that's true. Can't hate too much. Can't play or hate. Joining me is William Berger.
Yo.
And Brian Markheim's back.
Hello, everybody.
Is this 2 podcasts in a row?
I know. Knock on wood.
I know. We might actually get you for 3.
Go for the hat trick.
So, if you didn't know who Satoru Iwata was, which I don't understand how you listen to this podcast and not know who that guy is, because we're pretty, below the radar at this point. He was the CEO of Nintendo. He's basically been executive producer on a lot of their pretty much all their games for the last
10 years.
15 years to 10 years at least. Yeah.
02, I think.
Yeah, since 02, so 13 years. Oh, I'm sorry. He stopped. His last one was Fire Emblem Awakening. That was a 2013 game. So.
Although I imagine they'll probably still list him as an executive producer for the rest of the games that come out this year.
Yeah.
Because you'll still have Yoshi and Xenoblade, and those games have already come out to other territories, so his name's already there.
Yeah. So first, I guess let's just talk about the career of the dude. I mean, let's talk about just like the basic idea of this. He was a programmer, right? Mm-hmm. You want to talk about started from the bottom. He was a programmer. His very first game, I believe I have it written here, is Super Billiards for the MSX. And his first game as a producer was Rollerball for the NES, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he went from that to CEO of what is one of the the enduring gaming company right now.
Oh yeah,
I mean
one of the longest running surviving gaming companies in the world.
I mean, yeah. I mean, just as many console generations that have been part of, like,
They're the oldest one that's still going.
Yeah.
There's 2 types in game companies, Goggin. There's Nintendo, and then there's everybody else.
Pretty much. Yeah, it really is. And listen, I mean, we have been critical of Nintendo at times. Plenty of people are critical, but like the end of the day, Nintendo is not some chump change company where just anyone gets to be CEO. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. It's Nintendo. Like, it's the gaming equivalent of being CEO of Disney.
That's right. And it's not like Nintendo has a whole bunch of different presidents. I think Iwata was probably, I think he's like, what was the 4th?
4th
president?
The first
and he
one
was,
who... Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Brian, sorry.
No, he was the first president outside of the Yamauchi family. So he's a very unique individual to be put in that scenario. And I don't know, well, it's very tough to put into words how he just started off from very lowly beginnings in the trenches, working his way all the way up to being the CEO of HAL, which is second party company to Nintendo, and then just helping run the whole thing. And he's got a lot of wins under his belt, a lot of losses, but at the end of the day, he was a real great man. and
Visionary, pioneer, legend.
very, very much. He's a giant. He's
Yeah.
a giant in the industry, and the industry is still really, really young, and it hasn't really had as many titans die as of late or ever at this point, and he is perhaps one of the biggest losses the industry has had yet, and it's a lot to take in.
Didn't we lose?
It was Ralph Baer was the
Ralph
last,
Baer, yes, was the big one.
was a real big one.
Yeah, like that. I would argue is probably like I guess the biggest one, but like personally speaking, not that like whatever. When Steve Jobs passed away, that was sad. Like I had no connection to his products, but like I empathize with the idea of someone just lost a loved one. You know what I mean? Like you send your condolences and say rest in peace. But like when Iwata passed away, it was like my stomach turned, and just I felt so sick. I was like, oh man, are you serious? And then like, then you see like the saddest picture of Mario you've ever seen in your life, and it's like there's like a bunch of pictures of Mario crying. Those aren't anywhere near as sad as the NeoGaf one, where he's just got his hat off, hands to the side, and just head down.
The bowing one.
Yeah.
That one's not even supposed to be a sad one, and it just is turned into.
It's like, just the saddest thing you've ever seen, though.
Yeah, and it's official Nintendo art too.
Yeah.
And it's,
And it's just like the thing that got me was, initially it was like, oh man, Iwata's dead. Like that's terrible. We've like kind of been, as fans of the company, been through a lot with this guy. He's been the face of the company for a long time, and then you learn about all the things that he did, and it's just like, man, I just keep feeling worse and worse.
Yeah, like the tail end of our childhood to like when we became adults, like that guy's been at Nintendo.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he has ushered in, or at least played some sort of role in all
consoles.
Those two consoles at least. He, I guess let's talk about some of the major games and the stuff he's done. Like
Balloon Fight's a big one that comes up. Really cool NES game that Swery, who we like Deadly Premonition, and me and Ben are into D4. That guy's outright said Balloon Fight's his favorite game ever.
Yeah, it's certainly a fun game. It's and I think it was said that the mechanics for flying in that game was an inspiration in part to the swimming levels in Mario.
Yeah. I mean,
get the physics down a bit.
Yeah, that game definitely showed up in other ways. I mean, Mario Kart Battle Mode with the balloons, like it comes from a very specific game with the balloons going in the air. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So,
and it's one of those games that probably would not have seen a home console release without Iwata being like, I can program this.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah. Like, the thing that's been lost over the years is this guy wasn't a good programmer. He was an absurdly good programmer to the point where, I'm not going to bring it up. But, whatever. I saw a thread once on a forum talking about how certain... they were questioning the quality of Nintendo's programmers, right? And it's like, now you look back at it, first of all, it's a ridiculous statement, considering how polished their games are usually. It's like, what? What? Like, no, they're actually really good at their job.
Oh, yeah.
Not like they may take a while, but whatever. But, like, Iwata himself was just absurdly good, considering some of the stories you've heard about, like, things he's done, right?
Yeah,
oh, yes.
Like, I forget what was it. He wrote code for something that, and he was really depressed because he'd never been able to work directly on the Mario games. But the code that he wrote for one of the games actually was turned into, like, the way that the characters moved in one of the Super Mario Brothers games.
That was that's Balloon Fight.
It was Balloon Fight.
Yes.
Yeah, and so he was like super stoked. That's like, yes, I finally got to work on a Mario game.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's and then we move on to he saved Earthbound. Like, think of the enduring cult classic legacy that game has, and it's all on that guy. Like, he saved that project and brought it over. More or less.
It was Itoy and his team were toiling away, and they weren't making much progress. And I guess Iwata went in to check on things, and he's seen what they did. And that team having trouble like getting the screen to scroll.
Yeah.
Oh, like that was just an example of some of the problems they were having, and
problems people had in the 90s, and like we take for granted now.
Oh, exactly. It's
like a video game scrolling. Why is that difficult? It's like, no, that actually used to be like the most impossible magical thing.
Because the scrolling left to right, that's one thing, but with Earthbound, it scrolls all over the place.
Yeah.
And Iwata gave him two options, apparently. It was that the rate they were going, it would take them 2 years to complete and then risk being canceled or not coming out, or to start the whole thing from scratch with Iwata's help and then finishing it up in 6 months, because it would be a lot easier to reprogram that way. And he threw his hat into the ring and helped them reprogram the game and get it out the door and bring it out to the world.
Yeah. It's a good game.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently the code that he helped write for it is so thorough that you can run an emulator or just basically use it to make an emulator for any game on that system.
Which is just amazing. Which is just amazing.
I didn't know that.
Like,
you could make it
so
later.
cool.
Wow.
I mean, like, the story that like really blew my mind, and then like I shared it on Twitter, and then my boy Eric actually responded to it too, was when people said that. So they apparently filled up the cartridge for Pokemon Silver and didn't have enough space to put in Kanto, which like is ridiculous when you think of what that game is. Like, that game's end game is remembered as this like amazing moment, because like, no, you get to go back to the first game and kick your predecessor's ass. Like, that's so awesome, right? And it was like Iwata basically like condensed that game to make it fit on whatever space they had left on that cartridge.
Right. So,
and,
sorry, Goggin, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and like when you think about it, it's like I don't remember that area being buggy or missing anything major. Like, no, it had all the, you know, gyms, the freaking areas. Like, it was the music.
Yeah, I mean, it really had pretty much everything from. I mean, it was downscaled a little bit, obviously, because you didn't need to go to as many places, but like,
yeah, you didn't need to go to
there,
SSN or anything.
But the music was there, the buildings were there. It all looked and felt like the game that you played back in the day. With all this new stuff. And, you know, it was funny because a while back we were talking about like our favorite JRPGs, and I talked about like, for me, Gold and Silver was really special because you got to go back to that area, and it was the first one that felt like, hey, I'm not like playing along with like the manga or the TV show. Like, this is actually my game that I can go back and be in these areas with. And it's crazy to think that it almost didn't happen and wouldn't have happened without him stepping in and being like, don't worry, I got this.
And then to continue on that Pokemon point, he got the code for, or at least made a prototype for the very first Pokemon Stadium in a week.
Yeah, he coded the battle program.
Documents. That's right. He was just going over the code of the red and green, and it's like, oh, I bet I could make something out of this, and like on a whim, like in his spare time. And they were so impressed with the prototype, they got it into production right away.
Yeah. Basically ported the entire battle system, which is just nuts, in a week. No reference material.
Yeah, and I would argue his like greatest work also happens to be his last work as a programmer, is because of like the quality of the game and what that game has become. You know, like for all intents and purposes, like Super Smash.
Back at Evo this week.
Yeah, Super Smash Brothers Melee. It's back at Evo this week. It's gonna be. That's got to be the oldest entry of. I mean, it is. It
is by far.
Of the main eventers, it's the oldest entry on that list. Yeah,
and I think it was the third most registered for game.
Yeah, like, it is what it is. Melee is basically one of Nintendo's institutions at this point. You know, it is always going to be the elephant in the room when they're making Smash Brothers games, or when you're even playing Smash Brothers games. Like, man, Smash Brothers is really good. It's just not Melee.
Right.
Brawl sucks because it's not Melee. Smash Bros. 64 was cool, but it wasn't Melee. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And apparently that game was going to launch a hot, buggy mess. Well, obviously it was going to launch because it's Nintendo. Well, it was going to be delayed, like, really long, right? And wasn't going to be out until this guy came in and, like, just fucking started debugging that thing.
Like, that's back when he was just became the general manager of Nintendo.
Yeah, you gotta think about this, like, those bugs, a lot of bugs and glitches still made that game, because, like, wave dashing and all that stuff happened to be glitches. So, like, it's not that crazy to think that game must have been a disaster before this guy, like, finally fixed it, you know? Well, helped them out at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we're not saying, like, Iwata made these games or, like, whatever. We're just, like, he made some major contributions to these things that were, like, impressive feats of programming.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yes.
Apparently, I just learned this today, but apparently he continued to step in every now and then for certain things. Like, he worked on Mario Kart 8, doing some fine-tuning for that game and on some other things. So he kept doing it, even though he was still...
But, like, he was an exec when he did a Melee. Like, the other stuff, like, early in his career, like, those situations where, no, he worked...
As a programmer, right.
Yeah, like, it made sense. But, like, when he did Melee, it was like, no, this guy's, like, the heir apparent. This is, This is...
The last one I apparently heard about, I didn't know about Mario Kart 8, but I know he, back when Nintendo Land was first getting shown off to him, or at least in an early state, they had a balloon fight minigame in that, and he got to play around with it a bit, and he noticed it didn't feel quite right. So he actually went in and he looked at the code, and he fixed that up for that younger team, and they were in awe. They didn't expect him to do that, and he went in and he helped fix that game just on the fly.
Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to, like, these stories. Like, these stories are great, and they're one part of why he's great. The other thing is, man, like, yes, he was a suit. Yes, he was a CEO, but that's, like, he was the most personable of all of them, right? Like, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I've been an angel to him all the time. I've complained every time he's at an E3 press conference that I was like, maybe he doesn't need to be on stage, because I like a clearer speaker on stage, because that's how I am about that shit. Like, I don't want someone with, like, a very thick accent. Like, get me someone that can, like, really speak to the audience, because when you're presenting something, you want your best foot forward, and I would argue that he necessarily isn't. But, you know, if there's ever been... The counterpoint to my argument is everyone's reaction to the guy. Because it's like, because he was so personal, because he would go up there knowing... I mean, fully aware that he's not going to come off as clear as Jack Tretton or Shane Kim at the time for Micro... Or Peter Moore. Like, he always came off as, like, a guy who just, like, ended up with one of the greatest jobs on the planet. You know what I mean?
I like how... I mean, he certainly he was the suit. He was the man in charge of this multi-billion-dollar conglomerate company, but he was never afraid to make fun of himself, and he was always the face of the Nintendo Directs, and he was always up for a good time and having fun. Very cheerful, not a cynical bone in his body. It ever struck me. Like, he would always
like, Miyamoto every now and then can say some curmudgeon ass shit.
Oh yeah, he certainly can.
Yeah, like, you know, Iwata never like freaking had that, like, crotchety thing to say. Like, I always thought he was a little bit more pleasant.
Like, his predecessor Yamauchi, apparently
that guy's a badass.
Yeah, he was behind those thick shades.
A badass.
Was a bit of a titan in his own. Like, he was the power. It was his way or the highway more often than not. And Iwata would take a lot of those qualities of where he followed Yamauchi's guidance in trying to make games for everybody, where everyone can play and everyone can have a good time, fun for everyone, but being a far more personable, far more open, far more, perhaps more approachable figure. You know, Yamauchi, you see his pictures and he just looks like a man who could chew your ass in half.
He definitely looks like your boss.
Oh yeah, he looks like your boss. And you better not say anything out of line, or you're gone.
Yeah, I mean, you know, going back to this, like, again, you know, not that we want to rank dead dudes, but, you know, Yamauchi was another big death, and that's, you know, the Wii U's life cycle has included some noteworthy deaths for Nintendo.
Oh yes.
You know what I mean? Like, that's gonna be, like, a weird thing about this generation has been, like, not the last two big presidents of Nintendo are like they are no longer with us. And
Mm-hmm.
this one stings a lot more. Just, like, first of all, he's 55, and that's
Oh.
there's no right age to die, but 55 is way too young.
That. Any way you look at it, it's a tragedy.
Yeah, like that's just come on. And then Patch on our forum made me feel like such shit because he's like, could you imagine this guy was at his deathbed, like apologizing to us nerds about how bad their E3 was, and it's like, oh, that is so shit.
God, the last time we got to hear his voice was in Muppet form,
Yeah.
and who knows how long ago he recorded that. And the last time he addressed the fans when he was
It was an apology.
Was an apology saying like we're gonna look. We take your opinions on our Nintendo Direct seriously. We will try to meet your expectations
in the future.
And
as sad as that is, I think it's almost the perfect like thing to go out on him for, because it's very much who he was, like, as an executive. Like, he cared about what people thought and how the directs were presented and how people viewed the company and stuff like that. And like, for him to come out and be like, hey, we're acknowledging what you're saying, we're paying attention, trust me, we're going to work on it, just seems like a very Iwata thing to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's kind of like, as sad as it is that he like had to apologize for, I mean, it wasn't a great showing, let's be honest, but like that he felt the need to personally come out and say, I hear you, we are working on it, is part of the reason why people like that guy so much.
It wasn't like Don Matrick, who came off oblivious to the fan base at E3. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, it was instantaneously Nintendo was ready to respond about people's reaction, like, whereas Microsoft was getting crucified.
Oh yeah.
And it felt like it took a few weeks before Microsoft finally like came to the conclusion of like, yeah, we fucked up.
I think back to when the 3DS first came out too, when they sold that thing, and then not long after that they had the $70 price cut.
Yeah.
And sure, they offered the 10 free ambassador games, but Iwata he wrote a letter to the consumers apologizing for that sort of thing. It's in the same vein as this tweet.
Class act, man.
Tweet. He didn't ever seem to talk down to his audience.
Yeah.
He addressed every single one of them in a very friendly, neighborly sort of way.
Yeah, I mean, in any like work or field, there's always that like cat, like you look at him and you go, class personified, right? Like when people talk about Peyton Manning, for instance, in football, he is like, say whatever you want about how the media talks about him, like Peyton Manning, the human being, is amazing. Like, he's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's just like classy all the way through. Like he sends like thank you letters to retiring players, like thank you for all your contributions. Like, not many players do that type of shit, right? And then like Iwata in that same, like, in his field is absolutely that, because he put his salary on the line as opposed to laying off a bunch of employees. And you can be cynical and about this and say, well, really, it's a reasonable long-term move. You don't want to hurt morale. He's really correct. It would have hurt their bottom line products and blah, 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 blah. It's like, no. Don't. Like, why are you even trying to downplay this? Like, he put his salary on the line instead of laying people off. The amount of CEOs that would ever do that is got to be a small-ass number.
You can probably count them on two hands.
Yeah, if we're being nice. I feel like 2 hands is pushing it.
I feel like I was being generous there.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just like, you know.
Yeah, taking a pay cut, but let alone a 50% pay cut.
Yeah, he cut his pay in half. I think Miyamoto did too.
Yeah.
I think there were other there were multiple people who took pay cuts, but Iwata took the biggest.
Yeah, because, I mean, he's right. It would have hurt morale. It would have compromised some of their games, probably. But, you know, at the end of the day, like, he saved jobs.
Yeah. He,
like, that's something anyone should be able to empathize with, is that, you know, the bills don't pay themselves. Those people were able to maintain a occupation so they could pay their bills, even though that company was struggling, because this guy took a pay cut. When Microsoft is struggling, no one's taking a pay cut up the food chain.
Nope. That's absolutely correct.
It's not even that, it's just the way he handled it. You know, people were like, well, why didn't you lay these people off? He's like, well, I don't feel like artists can create that well if they're worried about losing their jobs when we don't do well. So better for me to do it, because I know I'm going to be here. And it's just like, the dude was so classy. It's ridiculous how classy
he legitimately was working because he loved it, not just because of the money. I mean, he had to. Think of the era he came into this business. I mean, gaming wasn't some billion-dollar or like industry when he came into gaming. It became this behemoth that it is today, and
he got into it because he loved it.
And
getting into the nitty-gritty and putting in the time and the effort to program that stuff. He felt, I guess there's a story told where he wanted to get into computers because he knew they would be the future.
Yeah.
And he called that one right.
He definitely called that one right. There's that great E3 note, the quote has been said one too many times. I'm sorry, not said enough, but it is being said plenty this week at least. Is on his card it says corporate president. In his mind, he's a programmer, but in his heart, he's a gamer, and it's like, it's like this beautiful, sentimental, sappy thing. But it works. Like, it just works. Like, it is what it is. Like, just sometimes cheesy shit works because, you know what? Cheesy shit is perfectly fine.
That's all right with that.
And, and it showed throughout his career. He was, like I said, really personable. I mean, like all these people, like, we can be critical of Nintendo all you want. Like, even if I said, it was like, maybe it's time for a new leader, I never wanted the dude gone this way. Like, that's a shitty way to go out. Like, 55, you should be watching your grandkids grow up and, like, you know what I mean? Like, you've earned that at that point, and he didn't get to see that. Like, he went out because of, what was bile duct cancer? Like, a tumor in his bile duct?
Yes.
Yeah, so, one that's, like, an incurable disease, from my understanding, almost.
It's got like a 10% survival rate.
Yeah, it's like it's basically a death sentence, and this guy's been plugging along the last year, like, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's like that movie setup where the guy knows he's got a year to. It's like the freaking All-Star Superman where he knows he's got a year to left, so he's gonna go do Superman things for one more year, right?
And he seemed to make a lot of future decisions.
Yeah.
He's got the DNA mobile thing that's underway. You've got your NX and quality of life thing going to be coming out soon.
Yeah.
They have always got partnership with Universal that they did.
Yeah.
You've got rumors of a Disney sort of partnership that
It's gotta be something there because like the Amiibo stuff like almost sells itself.
Yeah, and the Amiibo, I mean that is what it is. Yeah. I mean he's sown those seeds for the future.
Yeah, like people like to give him shit because that the Wii U isn't successful and then the 3DS is less than what they were used to. It's like, okay, if he must accept all of the blame for when things went wrong, then you better give him the credit for the Wii and the DS because there's a very good chance Nintendo will not release a console and handheld that is as successful as those two.
Today's day and age, it's tough. I don't think you're
like I don't think anybody will release anything as successful as the DS again.
Yeah, like the DS is just like, especially in the handheld space, like I hate jumping to this conclusion before it's over, but like it's looking like a dying space because it's losing to cell phones. Like that market has shrunk to kids, and the kids these days play on an iPad.
That's true.
And but like the DS, like fucking printed money. It felt like, you know what I mean. And the Wii was, I mean, we for whatever ill wills we had towards it because it didn't have enough games that appeal to us, the gamer buff, if you will, or nerd, whichever word you want to use. He wasn't wrong for chasing that blue ocean wider audience thing because he was right. If you're gonna legitimize this medium, you need to finally appeal to other people. Like movies like Transformers and all that shit needs to exist because people who want dumb shit sometimes just want dumb they want to be entertained and not, challenged all the time. You know what I mean?
And the other thing, like, we kind of forget, like, growing up with it and being in part of it for a long time. But if you hand somebody, like, an Xbox controller and you're like, go play this game, they're going to be looking at you like, what?
Yeah.
There's so many buttons. What
You notice it when you give it to, like, a kid who's just getting it or, like, whenever you hand it to, like, a family member who doesn't play games and then they, like, they're oblivious to how this thing works. And it's like, and to you, it's just basic hand-eye coordination. It's like second nature at this point.
Because you've been playing all those games. But for someone who didn't play games, you could hand them a Wii controller and be like, hey, look, it's got like 4 buttons. you can play this.
Yeah.
You know, it was self-explanatory. You didn't have to explain it.
It was certainly the one of the greatest 1-2 punches that you could ever hope for in the video game space.
A lot of the DS was, you know, I mean, a lot of the games for the DS, like how they used the touchscreen, just happened to be, I mean, that's mobile gaming today. That's
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of those ideas began there, and like people took some of those ideas and then went further with it with like a better touchscreen that's on like our phones these days.
Oh yeah.
So,
But,
you know,
and the other thing that I think kind of gets forgotten about Iwata was Nintendo used to be really hard to figure out what Nintendo was doing at any given point and who was working on what.
Mm-hmm.
And then Iwata Asks comes along, and we get these really in-depth interviews about the game creating process at Nintendo.
They're some of the best interviews ever.
Yeah, which, you know, should probably be like condensed and released as a book so that there's a record of them. But, you know, and then the company continued to get more and more open as time went on, and you could look and be like, you know, there's stuff from E3 like this year and the year before, and just their directs, like they just sit down and talk to their developers and be like, so here's our thought process for our Yoshi game that has yarn in it.
Like they explain, like you get like behind the scenes sort of like responses to like what working under Miyamoto is like, and you hear like these hilarious stories of like, wait, that sweet old man is that mean? What?
Yeah.
Anyway, and then, you know, like the Kamiya story was just like, that's one of my personal favorite reads because it goes over like his entire career, or like just the idea that Okami was like, they were struggling, like, what should she do? She's a goddess or whatever. And then and then they just had that epiphany of like, oh, she's a goddess, she can do anything. And then like that's where that game like broke open for them on the process, and it came on, and it was like a passion project for them. It was like, that was great because like. And I get, like, Iwata had the advantage of, like, you know, like, a journalist has to go seek it out and then, in their case, learn Japanese or wait till a translator's there. And you lose something in translation that way. Oh, but yeah. Iwata had the benefit of, some of you work for me, so we're gonna speak.
And he always seemed to know the right questions to ask because of that development background.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
He's got that natural curiosity about that sort of thing.
It's like when, like, at GDC or something and people make, like, game development jokes and you, the audience, doesn't get it, but, like, no, like you at home doesn't get it, but people in the audience, because they're game developers, are, like, laughing. Because they're like, oh my god, that's so fun. Like, well, the one I always bring, what I remember is, Itagaki was talking about how they had to do Dead or Alive 2, I guess, like, as a launch game in, like, less than a year. Right? Mm-hmm. And he was just explaining the process, and he just said it as a joke. It was like, yeah, they wanted us to do it and launch in less than a year. It's a launch game. And then, like, the crowd just started laughing, because basically all of them figured it out. Like, no, that's a pain in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's always good. And yeah, so, like, from a legacy standpoint, he gets to have some badass programming, Nintendo's most successful devices. Oh, and he happens to be the most personable executive they've had, probably, and, well, you know, they might end up with someone just as personable, because, you know, that's the standard he set.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty damn good legacy, considering you only got to live 55 years.
Yeah, the man sure still, I know he had more left in the tank, and it's a shame.
It is what it is, though. That's the unfortunate, sad truth about life. Is that some of us are taken too early. Yeah, I mean, I'm not even joking. I might not even add the fucking intro music we usually have. Like, I'll just start the podcast, no cold open, just like, fuck it, just go.
Yeah.
Just cause, you know.
Yeah. It was
hell of a career.
It was a sad couple days. Yeah.
It was sad. I was like, I mean, we were talking about this. I was like, when like I said, when Chris brought it up, I was like, man, a lot of the developers I'm going to give a shit about are Japanese, and I'm having a hard time. Like, I'm glad Kamiya and Mikami are still young. I mean, you know,
relatively young.
Relatively young and, like, healthy sounding so far, that I'm not too worried about them. Itagaki, it's probably going to end pretty bad.
What I fear is that, you know, Iwata still is pretty young, but and then you get to thinking about Miyamoto. And
that's the big one. That's the big one. That's the one where I'll be like, I'm not going into work. This is a sad day.
It's like Walt Disney dying.
Yeah, it will be. It's for us. He is that. You know.
It put it in perspective for me because I'd always known like Miyamoto dying is going to be rough, and I'm just sitting there like, man, if like Iwata is tearing me up this bad, like Miyamoto,
It really was that. It really was that. Yeah. That's what it was like, guys. I know you guys feel really shitty, and like we were talking in Skype all day, and like people were trying to have a good sense of humor about it. Like Moogle was going, it's like, man, it's raining inside. I don't know what the fuck is going on today. And it's like, oh my god, when this happens, like the pictures people are gonna draw for Miyamoto are gonna be absurd.
Oh,
it's just gonna be like, nope, I'm calling out of life. I'm not getting out of bed.
This is just sad. But no, hell of a career. Rest in peace.
I hope all of his work continued to influence and bring joy to everyone who plays it for the end of time.
Yeah,
he deserves
William's going back through Pokemon Silver right now, so he's at Kanto.
I just got to Kanto. I blew through the Elite Four. I was like getting there, and I was like, I'm gonna play this game for Iwata. And I got to Kanto, and I was like, that game was such a fundamental part of my childhood that imagining not being able to go to Kanto was just like
blew my 12-year-old mind.
I couldn't fathom it. And like, you realize like how close they came to, had they not had him, maybe that wouldn't have happened if he doesn't step in.
Yeah.
So you realize like, oh my god, like this is insane.
And then I got Earthbound off of the Virtual Console, so I'll probably start playing that. Speaking of which, like I don't want to say this, and then we don't do it because we're lazy. But maybe, Brian, it's time to go back to Earthbound.
Maybe you guys should record some more Earthbound. Yeah,
man, maybe.
Make it Earthbound Wednesdays.
Earthbound Wednesdays. Oh, that'd be all right.
Actually, I work a lot of Wednesdays. Earthbound Thursdays?
We'll find a way.
Yeah, Tuesdays seem to be podcast day. Well, this week it was a little weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't full in the mood. Like, when I was leaving work Sunday, I'm like, all right, I can just get the podcast done tonight because everyone's going to be in a really good mood. They're free. I can just get WASD or something if I really want to be lazy. And then, like, I got home, read the news, I'm like, I don't want to do shit. I didn't even want to play a video game at that point. I was like, man, this is just sad. It's just not the same right now.
Earlier in the day, I drew a picture of Kirby. And then later in the day, I just finished it up, put on, this is going to be a happy-go-lucky picture of Kirby. Kirby's great. And then one of the guys who was instrumental in making Kirby, he just died.
I know. It was kind of eerie looking at your tweet because my Twitter feed didn't load up for a while. So I'm like, oh, man, Brian, 3 hours from now, you're going to be so sad.
Oh, I was.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was a weird time. Future of Nintendo.
They've got to stay the course, really. Whoever they get in there, you're probably not going to get a lot of like when Iwata first took over, you still had a little bit of Yamauchi pulling some strings here and there, but when the DS started getting some of the real inventive stuff with like the Brain Age and things like that, that's when Iwata started to really make a name for himself within like being the face of the company and everything, and bring in some new ideas. So whoever's running the show, you probably won't feel their pull until like a year or two down the line, when we
won't feel it during the NX, or like at least until midway through the NX. But that console after the NX is definitely that guy. Yeah,
because it's in a leadership position. Like at some point, it's how much of this is the guy that came before me or the procedures that we used to use.
Yeah. I like the Xbox One. Like for all the good things Phil Spencer's doing, it still feels like a done. Like the platform is a done metric machine.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas like he couldn't he brought in Kinect on the 360, and it was a good addition commercially, but like it didn't compromise the 360 because the 360 already had like established things from his predecessor. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And, it is what it is at this point. And then Kutaragi, again, the PS4 makes sense that that's his machine, because the PS3, again, he wasn't, the man running the show. But the PS3, by the time he was running the show, it was already too late for, Like, the PS3 was set for what it was gonna be. So like, you know, this next machine is more or less gonna be an Iwata machine. And I mean, I would still hope that there are some significant shifts that are made. I hope they don't rely necessarily on a gimmick. Because I think that lightning was going to happen once. Because I think, I'm sorry, because I think the mobile, like, that broad audience, like, they're getting theirs from Apple and Android.
Yeah. You'll get something in the form of gimmick. Like, gimmicks have been a thing since N64.
That controller was a gimmick in a weird way.
Yeah, you know, you get your analog control.
Yeah.
And all the things you could plug into it. They will probably have something. Like, the Wii worked in maybe not quite the way that any of us really wanted it to work, but it worked for the general audience, and it really took off. The Wii U controller, not so much so, because by the time it got released, it was already outdated.
Yeah, I mean, like, the Wii, like, we love saying it didn't work for us, but it's like, it worked in the way it mattered fucking most.
Yep.
It printed money.
Absolutely.
For a shitload of Nintendo's games sold a lot of copies. Mario Kart Wii is absurdly high in the sales department. 40
million people?
Yeah, something absurd. Like, New Super Mario Brothers Wii is, you know, without being a pack-in, is one of Wii Fit sold so much, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wii Sports and all that. It will rely on something, and it'll be tough because as hard as Iwata tried to make Nintendo a touch more open with his Nintendo Directs and his Iwata Asks and going in certain directions, there's still a big mind share of people within the Nintendo. There's a bunch of Nintendo leaders who make a lot of decisions, and and the next leader's gonna have to kind of juggle all of that.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
you still got a lot of the old guard at Nintendo.
You want to talk about, like, Iwata probably must have been really good at his job. He had Yamauchi as one of his board of directors.
Oh yeah, you've got a lot. You've probably still have a lot of people.
You had that badass on your goddamn staff. You probably had a bunch of long meetings, I bet.
A little bit. I bet there's still people on that staff from the NES days.
The GameCube was... here's the other one. Like, people forget the GameCube was a commercial failure.
Yes. Like, I mean, they were selling that thing $100 bucks.
He bounced back. Nintendo bounced back from all that.
Yes.
It's not unreasonable to say that he helped save the company.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe save is pushing it, but, like...
making it far more relevant.
Yeah.
Turned around, because the post, like, you have to, like, the N64 was, again, same thing. It was a commercial failure.
Mm-hmm.
It had really good games on it, but it got beaten by the PS1 badly.
Yeah,
same thing with the GameCube. It got destroyed.
And it was, the GameCube also, like, as much as it made its money, it was a whole lot of price cuts to make it sell enough that the software could carry it from there.
Yes.
I mean, I will, go to bat for the GameCube because it was a fantastic system, but it just didn't sell.
A bunch of great games, yeah. It just didn't sell because it was outclassed. I mean, it was what it was.
It was what it was.
Like, you couldn't even say, like, it was unjustified that the GameCube wasn't selling, because it was like, no, I get it. The PS2 is the PS2 of that era. Like, it is what it is. It gets so many games so frequently.
And you had Nintendo there was a portion of the GameCube's life where they were developing a 3D Mario, a 3D Zelda, and a Metroid game at the same time. That's usually very offset. They were serious business, like desperate Nintendo during those times, try to get things turned
2002 around. Had Sunshine and Metroid, and then, like, early 2003 had Wind Waker, and then they already, like, the first 3 years of the GameCube was actually pretty loaded, and from, like, when you just look at what Nintendo put, they had Melee, which is the best Smash Brothers. They had Metroid Prime, which is in the running for the best Metroid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Sunshine isn't the best Mario or anywhere close, but, like, it's still fucking Mario.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You know, Wind Waker, I would argue, is not the fucking best Zelda, but, like, it's still Zelda. Like, they're not, like, chump change franchises, and they still got F-Zero GX in that time. They still had Rogue Leader and Eternal Darkness and all these other, like, when they were publishing more, like, a wider variety of games. So, like, the GameCube had games, but it just didn't sell.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, they had to bounce back from that and create a system that would, like I said, print fucking money.
Yeah.
And, props to them because they did it.
Yeah. So
we'll see where it takes him.
yeah, I mean, his last role as executive producer was on Fire Emblem Awakening. That is not a bad game to go out on.
That's pretty good.
That's a really great game. You know, the thing that worries me the most about like the future of Nintendo is Iwata had restraint. People were saying for years and years and years, you need to go mobile, you need to go third party, you need to do this. And it was like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do things our own way. So finally they have this mobile partnership and they're doing this thing with Universal and maybe they'll do a partnership with Disney. But it was very measured. They took their time and decided, what's the right way to do this? How do we represent Nintendo best? And I feel like maybe if not for him, that's not going to be the case anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, another thing that what might be lost here is, like, when Wonderful 101 was coming out, we all knew it was going to be a commercial failure. Like, come on.
Yeah,
But, like,
that's rough.
You know, me and Ben were never too worried about Platinum because, you know, as Ben was outright saying, was like, when do you ever hear stories about Nintendo treating a developer poorly or not taking care of someone making games for them? Like, Nintendo makes developer-friendly contracts when they make deals with them. It's like, no, you're going to get paid. You're not going to get screwed over on this deal.
Mm-hmm.
They get taken care of.
Yeah. Because I bet what they paid for Wonderful 101 was not worth what they got from that game. And I like that game. Like, do not.
That
like,
game is good.
Yeah.
If you have a Wii U and you don't own Wonderful 101, shame on you.
Yeah, shame on
You
you.
could probably find it really cheap right now, too.
You can find it really cheap. Go buy it.
I mean, you know. And it's just. God, it was so disappointing to hear that on Sunday for us. Yeah.
It
was rough. It was really rough.
Yeah.
I was not having a good day that day, and then I saw that, and I was just like, welp.
Well, fuck this day.
I'm done. That's it.
Chalk this day up as an L.
Yeah, I struggle to think of a CEO I would break down and feel super sad about.
Yeah, like empathize is one thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like I'm not incapable of saying rest in peace and my condolences. That's easy to say because it's a universal pain at that point. But there's a difference when you feel the pain in more personally. You know what I'm saying? Like Ryan Davis on Giant Bomb when he passed away. Like, we never met him.
Oh no!
But we heard his voice so many times, and he was just sort of he was there. Like, so we had like an emotional reaction to it. It's like the people that cried when Michael Jackson passed away.
Oh yeah,
right.
Or when Elvis died, and all. It's when the people. Like, we never meet these people, but we see them and we hear them, and they greet us like we're good friends, and they put out things that we like. Yeah,
and like it really comes out as simple as like, no, that person entertained me. Like it's as simple. It wasn't like I put the person on a pedestal. It was just, man, like, you know, like Michael Jackson is an example. It's like for a lot of people, they were raised on fucking Thriller and Beat It and all those great songs, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, you know, like if you're a wrestling fan, you know, you probably bitched about Vince McMahon 1,500 times. I guarantee you the day he leaves this world, they're all gonna feel sad, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, as shitty as Vince has been at times, he's also, the guy that's been behind mostly the company of your childhood and your passion and all that shit. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
So, in that context, like, Iwata's, like, you know, like, Nintendo has been... I've always had a soft spot for that. Like, I bitch about them because I like them that much that I have to bitch because it's like, no, you guys could be a 10 out of 10 instead of an 8. Yeah, you know, like it's petty semantics bullshit. It's almost like, you know, wasting an hour of a podcast bitching about bird levels. You know?
Oh, I know.
Yeah, like who would do that? You know,
it sounds super petty.
That really does sound pretty petty, and maybe not the best use of your time on a podcast.
Yeah, I know. Goodness gracious. Man, who would do that?
Yeah, it's just...
Sounds like a podcast I would listen to, though.
I
would probably listen to that.
You would think that, you would think that podcast would, like, end, though, with, like, the right, like, resolution at the end, and, like, not the incorrect one, but I guess it just works that way.
Oh, what can you do?
Anyway,
well, you know, nobody's perfect.
Yeah, no one's perfect. Thank you for listening to the episode. Promise the next one will not be this fucking depressing sounding, I hope. Otherwise, rest in peace, Mr. Iwata. My condolences to his family. We are out.
Peace.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.